Hello, everyone. Welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. My name is Elise. I'm joined by the lovely Jeanette and Lisa, and we get together every week to chat about all sorts of different things. Join us. Welcome. We join together. And yeah, this week we wanted to chitty chat about the clairs. So all of the ways in which but also any person can tune into spirit, the collective, the energies, the aliens, our guides, the universe, all the different things that we can connect to.
The aliens.
Yeah, the aliens. And yeah, we're going to also chat about what we specifically experience when we're tuning in. And I actually really appreciate we were chatting about what we were going to talk about today. And I really appreciate this topic because I remember when I was like getting into it and people would be like, just do this. And I'm like, right. Because my brain was still so like wanting to understand what I was doing. I'm like, right. But what exactly is going to happen? Or like, what exactly am I looking for or feeling?
Yeah.
Or like I wanted something tangible to hold
Yeah.
because a lot of it can feel ethereal, even though we can get to places where it feels really tangible. I think especially in the beginning, it's like, what is it? What am I doing? How do I do it?
How do I? Yeah.
Yeah, my right brain
And
likes
how do I know
steps.
that it's real, right?
Yeah, that
Versus
I'm not
like
making it up.
something that you're just making up.
I'll be honest, I still question myself on that
Well,
regularly.
and like lots of like say, well, you are. Active imagination is legit a part of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's an interaction for it because otherwise it's just you're relying so much on the 3D perspective of something, right?
Can I just before, Jeanette, we were going to ask you to kind of detail the clairs, but I want to take a moment. Actually, no, I'll say this at the end. You go first.
Okay.
Sorry.
Make them wait.
They were like, no, not yet.
Make them wait.
It's nothing that exciting. It's just something to like look at later.
Okay. I'm curious. Okay. So there are lots of different clairs. When we say clairs, we're talking about clairvoyance, which is your ability to see spirit. You can either see spirit with your actual eyeballs, where you're seeing a legit apparition of a different dimension. Sometimes clairvoyance can also be within your mind's eye. So if I say right now to everyone listening, picture a white elephant in your mind. If you're able to picture a white elephant in your mind, then that is the same method or pathway of clairvoyance. It's happening in the mind. Okay. Clairvoyance, though, can also be heightened for some people if you close your eyes. So some mediums like to speak with their eyes closed for a long time because they see a lot of stuff happening kind of like behind the lids of their eyes. That's where they see the imagery. That's still clairvoyance. Clairvoyance can come through as images, as like a movie scene. It can be just swooshes of color. It can be distortion in black or any color. It can be shadows. It can be all kinds of things. So that's all kind of the aspects of clairvoyance. You have claircognizance, which is direct knowing, instant knowing. You can't explain how you know, you just know. And it's bigger than intuition. It's not just, I feel that. It's like, this is this. Like you just know. So it's an automatic download. Clairaudience is the ability to hear spirit. So clairaudience can sometimes be hearing them audibly, like you're hearing my voice right now. It's registering in your eardrum, but it can also, again, be in your mind. And this is one that gets really confusing for people because clairaudience in your mind can sometimes come through with a different voice, which actually makes it a little bit easier, but it can often come through as your own voice or not even a voice. It's like a telepathic message is still received within the bounds of clairaudience because we're interpreting it as audio or words. And so that one can be very, very confusing for people. Usually people that are clairaudient know that they're clairaudient, if that makes sense. Excuse me. Then you have clairsentience, which we are all very much clairsentient. That's being like empathic, but even more so, where spirit can communicate through the senses of your body. So like touch, feel, you can feel the message of perhaps illness because you feel it in your body. You feel it come on and then you feel it dissipate, right? You could feel the heat or the presence of something behind you, but you can't see it or touch it, but you feel it, right? Clairsentience could even be spirit touch, where you literally feel it on you. Um, but is the body really being the interpreter or that interface between? And then you have some of the smaller clairs, which would be like clairgustance. Some people call it
Mm,
that, which is the ability to taste things. Some mediums taste a lot, right? And they'll be like, there's a flavor of apple
I don't want that.
pie, or uh, yeah, right. You know what's interesting? Um, in some of the classes that I teach, when we really go deep and open up our clairs, when people start to tune in after we've tuned into clairsentience and then we turn on clairgustance, people often talk about tasting copper. And what's happening is their taste buds, because they're tuned into higher frequency, are actually picking up on the flavor of the blood moving past and through their body.
Oh, cool.
Isn't that crazy? Like if you start to taste copper when you're tuning in, you're actually just becoming super sensitized and your body is recognizing it. Yeah, it's crazy. Last one is clair olfactory, which is the ability to smell. So if you're tuning into spirit and you're like, I smell like a wood shop or like cedar trees or cigarette smoke or cologne or roses, that's spirit's ability to communicate through sense, because sense actually is one of the most powerful memory pieces for people.
It is. It's the
Yeah.
most connected to memory and all of your senses.
Yeah, absolutely. And so spirit will use that. So some people are really dominant in one versus another. Some spirits are stronger at bringing through certain types than another. So although someone might say, I'm only clairvoyant, that could be true, but they likely have flavors of the other ones that come in and out as well. Other people use all of them depending on who's talking. So there is no right or wrong way in how you experience it either. It's just really about noticing what is different from what is normal for you in the moment
Mm.
in which you're tuning in. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, G.
I even
Yes,
learned
you're
something.
welcome.
I didn't know the clairgustance one.
Yeah, right?
Like knew that you could have it, but I didn't know the name of it. And I don't want that one because if it's something I don't want to taste, I'm going to become highly distracted.
Yeah, right. You're like, ugh, ugh,
Get rid of it.
what
Yeah,
is, ugh, what is
can't.
this? Very professional in a reading.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
also very sensitive to smells. So like I'll walk into the house, I'm like, the garbage smells, get rid of it. Like I
yeah,
can't handle it. So maybe
yeah,
that's why I don't really have them because they're
yeah,
like, your body can't. No, we're not going to do that to you.
could be.
So Lisa, what do you feel like your
Oh
main
my
ones
gosh,
are?
they're all. So as you're talking, it's like it just depends. And I tell my clients too, like every single one is significantly different depending on who I'm reading and how they're going to be able
Hmm.
to interpret it. So it's like whatever the reason that spirit brought us together is, like that's going to be the communication method. And so when I link into somebody's higher self, or like I am gained access into their energy field, I always do close my eyes at the beginning because that's where it takes me in. And then all of a sudden I can feel myself link into the, like it's almost like that direct channel opens up through me with them, and it's that connection. I can feel it. And then comes all the stuff. So it's always just a knowing. So when I bring through the message for somebody, I'll start talking to them like I've known them our whole lives.
Hmm.
And that's such a beautiful validation because it's just some like rando stranger who's bringing through this message for you that you're like so deeply, it's like a personalized thing, but spirit wouldn't bring it through if you weren't ready to hear it, right? So there's this knowing that always comes through. That's when it's like when I'm working like in that higher realm with spirit and I'm bringing through the message for them in a channel. And when I'm channeling, it's that knowing. It's just like that knowing. And sometimes it's like so crazy specific in that knowing where it's like I'm just speaking like I'm talking to somebody that I've known my whole life. And then it's really beautiful too, because when loved ones will come through and it's like that mediumship, it will be dependent on how that maybe loved one wants to be differentiated. So I'll be like, oh, I have somebody here. And then just the knowing, I'll be like, okay, it's on your mother's side, like up, like like I'll be able to tell which side, where it's kind of coming from, or if it's not relationship, but it feels like a sister, but it's not. Then if like we're digging into being like, okay, I need more because they need to know who you are, then they'll give me imagery. I'll be like,
Hmm.
tall guy, curly hair, he's wearing a uniform. And then all of a sudden I'll smell, I'll be like, Oh, he's like there's boots. He's a farmer. Like I can smell shit. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Or taste lots of times too. Or like I'll be brought into, grandma's kitchen and I'll be like, oh my gosh, she's making soup. And I'll look in, I'll be like, looks like borscht. Like that kind of stuff where I'll be able to really smell, taste, hear. Once I brought through like a vocal, I started singing in a different language. And it was his daughter who was was a singer in Spanish.
Mm.
And I was singing this and it was so emotional, right? But like when it comes through, my human emotion is kind of removed.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I'd be a mess all the time, right? And so like that will come through. So I've really had the luxury and that like the grace. I'm so grateful for it every single time. Being able to link into whichever capacity that is the most resonant for the individual in which I'm reading for. But when it just comes through for like somebody who I'm just chit-chatting with, I'll be like, whoa, oh, and it'll be like a knowing, right? You worked with a mentor, and that mentor in a different capacity you've never worked with. This is significant. What is this about? Tell me what this is about, right? And
Mhm.
it'll just be like off the tongue where they'll be like, what do you mean? Like how, you know what I mean? Like, and those are like the cool little clairs that come through that you don't even, it's just a knowing. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's what it is for me.
Yeah.
What
How
about
about
you,
you,
G?
Elise? There you go.
Oh, okay. For me, I would say most, the default setting that I had, especially when I was younger, was the knowing. And it would manifest in ways where I would like say something in the middle of a conversation and people would be like, wait, what did you just say? And I'm like, I don't know. And the key for me, because the, the internal ones, whether it's audience or the knowing, even the visual or cognizance sometimes because or clairvoyance, you can always question like, is this my brain making like a thing, right? Even if I'm like seeing, because I can close my eyes and think of a memory of my own life, and it plays out for me when it's clairvoyance. It's like a movie screen almost, and I can like see and sometimes it'll just be images or symbolism that I have, but it'll be like a movie screen almost that I'm watching. But a lot of my memories can play out that way too, right? If you were like recall a memory of da da da, that's
Yeah.
how it would feel for me. So I find those ones are the toughest especially as you're getting going, to kind of like figure out what's what. But for me, the first like realization or way that I was able to differentiate is if I followed my, bless you, thought pattern, I couldn't trace why that thing came
Mm.
in. So, like, I'd be having a conversation with someone and then I'd be like, "Bleh," and I'd say something. And then they'd be like, wait, why did you just say that? And I'm like, I don't know. And then the other piece of it was I would start to forget what, and
Totally.
because it wasn't my brain. My brain
Totally.
didn't create the thought. Therefore, I don't have a tangible like memory of it. So, very rarely will I remember things that have been said in readings unless there's
Same.
like a real like, oh my gosh moment. And then we pause and I step out of that. And then we have
Yeah.
a conversation about the thing that was said, because then it
Yeah.
imprints like
Yeah.
as a tangible memory. So people be like, oh, you said this. I went and got my hair done a few weeks back, and she was like, yeah, you said something about the girl who co-owned the space with her. I had like predicted that where she was going to get pregnant. I was like, I don't even remember talking about that.
I know, isn't
So
that the best when you're like, really? I did?
I said that.
Wow.
What? What are you even talking about?
yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, uh, I would say clairaudience too shows up, but it's often in my own voice and kind of in my own lens. It's coming through as an interpretation. And it was interesting. I was watching Tyler Henry. He has like a Netflix thing right now. And I was watching him reading these people. He was doing these like little group readings. And I'm like, you can see how he's doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to watch and I saw him live when he came here at one point too, and it was very much the same, where you can see, like, I'm like, oh, I know what he's doing right now. Like you can see the processing of like how he's bringing it in, and then he's like, this is strange, and then he'll like, and he
Yeah.
has these
Yeah.
phrases that he repeats, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I do the same thing where I have these things where I'm like, how am I trying to say this, because I'm like interpreting it through the lens of my brain.
Yes. You have to transfer it into vocals.
Which would be different than channeling, where it's like a direct plug-in and it's coming out of your mouth or hand, right? Like we can do channel writing and things like that too. And that is different. That's a different feeling. And Jeanette, I'm sure you can speak to that deeply too, but of like stepping aside.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I always, especially early on, I was like, I want to see with my eyeballs. Like I want to see Sixth Sense style, someone standing.
Dead people.
Yeah. I don't want to see dead people anymore. That's not something I want anymore. Be careful
I
what you wish for.
Fair. That's fair. But spirit, I was like, no, but I want it though. Like I want it. And they were, and like every once in a while I will, but it's not common by any stretch. And they were like,
Yeah.
no, because that's too easy for your brain. Your brain is one that seeks out so much, like, I want to know the science behind it. I want to like be able to analyze it. And that would be a gimme. Like that would be too easy for you to be like, we'll just give it to you. You have to actually work at trusting it and like letting go of your need to understand it. It'd be giving it to you too easy if we just like showed you, you know, dead person or an angel or whatever.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm over that. So if we could, I still wanna,
I still
wanna
want
see the
it
aliens
a
with
lot
my
of times
eyeballs.
too. Can you just make it a little easier for me?
like make it chill ones.
Yeah, because I feel like it's easier for other people because that is like channeling and bringing to the energy is super easy. But for me, when I want to like go down deep and like then like angels just let's show up and have a fucking conversation. But they
It's
don't.
always harder for self. Every single medium will always say it is so hard to read yourself or sometimes even loved ones because you know them so well that it it's harder. It's just easier to have a blank slate of someone
Yeah,
you don't know very well if you're too
100%.
close. Yeah, because we have
Because
too
it's
much of a
easier to
lens.
touch. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have desires of what we want and lenses of our past histories and things that get in there. Doesn't mean we
Yep.
can't, but like that's it's part of it, right? Like why it's not as
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I've
What
had to
about
learn
you,
and
Jean?
oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Jeanette, you actually told me once that, like, when I get obsessive about something, I have to pay attention to it because it's my own intuition, because my brain and my intuition will go back and forth, and they don't show up in the same way for me as they do when I do readings or for other people. But my brain wants to understand so badly that it's like, yeah. And you said, like, you're obsessing about this. So, and like, there'll be these things that I just can't let go.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember you saying to me, like, you need to just know that that's your intuition. I'm like, okay.
yeah.
It's not just my brain being obsessive about something.
Yeah.
All right. Not.
Totally. Because every time you do, it becomes a thing, right? Like it ends up being a thing, and there was a reason why every time.
And not
Yeah.
always things that I could just manifest or create.
Yeah,
Like it'll be
sure.
about other people or other things or sometimes myself as well. So yeah, I've learned that. And I think that's an important note, like we were just saying, to know the difference between how you might get information for others around you versus yourself could be vastly different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, G?
Yeah. So for me, I can use all the clairs. That doesn't mean I instantly learned how to use all the clairs. Like it developed through my life. So when I was a little kid, I know I was very clairsentient. I could feel a ton, didn't understand it. Then when I was kind of older teenager, I started to become clairvoyant, didn't understand it. I thought I was going crazy because I could hear voices or thoughts in my head that weren't mine. And of course, you think, okay, then I must have mental health problems.
Yeah.
And there's no judgment on that. But
Yeah.
it's very scary when you don't understand mediumship and that starts happening to you. And then in my early 20s is when clairvoyance really came in because that one to me was the scariest. I did not want to see. Ever since I was 5 years old and I could feel people in my room, I did not want to see them.
Yeah.
Yet that's my most favorite now. Like my most favorite clair is clairvoyance. I love it. It is my favorite. Give it to me every day. I want to see it all the time. Like that one to me is the most validating is clairvoyance. when
Yeah.
I tune in, I still had to learn how to tune in. So even though these things were happening to me, they were happening to me, and I had to learn the process of tuning into it. And I sat in mediumship circles for a couple years, and um, I remember the first clear clairvoyant thing I saw was it was like the world for me opened up this tube. And at the end of this tube, there was white, right? Like everything else was black, and there was white at the end of this tube. And I saw this shadow figure. All of a sudden, like this was the tube, it popped in. And I was like, I see you. And it was like, and then it popped out, and then it popped in again. And I was like, I am legitimately seeing this, right? Like it was such a big thing because I purposely was tuning in to see it rather than it just happening to me, right? And so my process of tuning in used to take me an hour. When I first started, I remember the very first reading I did, and for the several after that, I would take an hour to like tune into the energy. I would have to relax my body first, then start to open up all my chakras, relax my body further, open up my clairvoyance more to the point where I could finally be in a state to be able to do the reading. And that whole process just got smaller and smaller and smaller over time to where now I can just kind of sit down, take a couple breaths, and then we're in. It's that same
Yeah.
process, but it's just so refined now that when my intention to go in is there and I take that breath, release
Yeah.
it, say my intention, then the clairs that need to open or whatever spirit is waiting to come
Yeah.
through, open.
Yeah.
And so in that process, what happens usually is I always start with my eyes closed too, just to kind of like block out everything. I know when spirits are approaching because I start to see these little pinpricks of light show up behind my eyes. Like everything is black. And then it's like these little stars start to show up, and I can count. I'm like, oh, okay, there's about 7 spirits that are coming forward. And then I'll ask which ones want to come forward. And a couple of them will actually come forward. And I always explain it's kind of like we're in a horse corral and we're sitting in the middle. And the spirits, I can have tons of little stars come up to the edge, but until they step in to that corral, it doesn't actually look like that. It's the best way to explain it. Until they step in, I can't fully talk to them and they won't manifest. So they have to choose to come in. And when they come in is when they start to manifest with images or the movie scene of something they want to say. Or like Lisa, you said, I'll see on this grid pattern, like, okay, this is your mother. And it's actually your mother's sister because she's beside
Yeah.
your mom. And,
Yeah.
like you start to
Yeah.
get those pieces of info. But the way in which I learned those pieces of info was just time spent doing,
Totally.
realizing like,
Totally.
oh, when spirits come in on the right side, that means it's mother's side. Oh, when they come on the left, it's father's. When they stay up high, that's grandparent. When they're beside you, that's like sibling cousin, or below you is children or dependents. Like these are all patterns that developed over time, which
Specific
is
for
why
you. Yeah.
specifically for me, right? And so some people can have similar patterns, but even so, it's never about copying exactly what one person does because they do it. It's taking that info and being like, okay, this is one way it can show itself,
Totally.
but then let it be what it is for you,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
here's a good one. How do you all see pregnancy? How do you know when someone's pregnant? Do you have like a thing?
Yeah. See, and what I was going to say too is like, what I had to learn was how can translate the energy into words. So I will experience something in an energetic resonant and I'll be like, okay, that's this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like when something will come through, I'll be like, I got some resistance here. Like, I feel like this person passed and this person passed when they were not happy about this. And it was about like this age. And I do that because of a certain energy signature. And that energy signature I had to decipher into words.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something that I had to practice and understand. Or even my guides are like, that's what this means. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's what that means? Oh, okay. You know what I
Totally.
mean?
Yeah.
And so pregnancy and babies and lost babies and all that has a very unique yet very strong signature for me, because for some reason that's part of one of the things that spirit has been very, very clear about with me is anybody who's gone through that kind of stuff, or like pretty sensitive feminine experiences, it comes through in a very, very unique, very clear energy signature where I'll be like, okay. And so that's exactly it. Is I'll feel it, I'll be like, okay, I know what I'm here to talk about. Yet trying to detach from my like Lisa human consciousness and only bring through the messages for them, I have to merge it a bit because I have to bring through with compassion, yet not feel the emotions behind it, because that's not going to serve the individual, right? And so I'm like, okay, that's something that I've had to practice a ton about compassion, bringing through messages and not being like, boom, I got a baby soul here that you lost, or like there was, a situation, like where, so the person doesn't feel like I have any judgment behind it, or when they're coming through and I know they want to get pregnant so bad. And I'm like, it's not gonna happen, right? But like, how do you bring that through, right? Like it's this like weird compassionate, yet it's a very specific energy when it comes from babies, pregnancies, lost pregnancies, that
Interesting.
kind of stuff. Yeah.
So yours is an energy with that.
Yeah, and then I'll be able to I'll be like, okay, there's a baby here. Is this baby been lost? So it is like they'll show me, or a child. I'll be like, okay, this is a child. Is it yours? Is it living? Is it, like, and then I'll have to
Okay.
like go deeper into, oh, no, no, this is one on the other side.
Yeah.
And they did come through at one point and then pass, or no, their energy signature, they've actually never come through, to the point where even up until pregnancy, I'll be able to tell, or that they just never, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
a different signature.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What about you, Elise?
Well, and I'll answer that in a sec, but I think you bring up a good point, Lisa, too, I feel that we will forever have to figure out how to bring certain energies through. Because there's sometimes where I'm
100%.
like, there's not a word for what I'm feeling. And I'm like, okay, give me something that I can like use as
Analogy.
language, because I can't
Analogies and
get the
metaphors.
thing. Yeah, metaphors, analogies. Yeah. So I think that is, if that'll just forever be an unfolding thing, especially as we tap into greater consciousness and understanding of like spiritual or energetic theories. It's like our brain doesn't know how to comprehend what we're trying to say. With babies, or pregnancy, it's often I see like a little baby spirit up hanging out. I remember one of my first readings that I was like doing practice for fun, and it was like a friend of a friend who wanted it done, and there was a whole bunch of them. And we were at this girl's apartment, and I was like, okay, like they were all gonna sit in with each other, which was like such a bad choice for doing it so early on. And so I'm like tuning in for this first girl. I don't know her at all. And I'm like, I think she's pregnant. And then I'm like sitting there like, oh my
Yeah.
God, what do I say? Because it felt really early. And then I'm like, do they know? How well do they know each And I'm sitting there like, they're all staring at me like, what's happening? And I'm like,
No.
what do I do? It felt like 7 hours of sitting there trying to figure out how to go about this. And I kept being like, okay, well, if they're bringing it through, I can just say it. And then they would literally like stop me. So I'd be like, and then eventually one of the girls was like, should we leave? I'm like, I think so. That'd be good. That'd be good if you could leave. Because I didn't want to be rude and be like, you guys need to go. And so then eventually she was like, yes, I am. And it's really early and nobody knows yet. And I was like, okay, thank God. Thank God I did not say that in front of all of these
That's so
people.
validating for you too, though, Elise, especially in the learning phase, right?
Yeah, it was. And it was a really big learning experience too, about trusting the way I feel like I want to say something. Like if something's holding me back, it's like, okay, because I think too, sometimes what can come through in readings is like, spirit has something to say, but we need to be gentle or cautious about how. I think there's a lot of, and I'm not to poop on any other mediums, but I'm always just so conscientious of like the ethics behind it. And I don't always, we've talked about this before. Sometimes I'm like, can we put that in a nicer way, or like
Totally.
a better, easier to digest way?
Yeah.
Especially if I don't know the person's history or trauma or experiences. I don't want to just like dump something on them.
Yeah.
So I trust what spirit brings through, but I also trust if I'm feeling a hesitancy around saying something, then I'm going to ask for further clarification, or
Totally.
like, how much of this am I sharing? Or
Mhm.
if I share a piece, will they kind of fill in the rest? And then that opens the door for the
Yes.
safety of the conversation or
Yeah.
whatever. So,
Mhm.
yeah. What about you, Jeanette? How do you
Yeah.
experience?
Um, so when I tune in, if there are babies that are meant to be coming in, I will see them like, the old school bingo machine things that you like spin them and then they fall down into the chute. I see the chute and I will see several like balls. So if I know this person's meant to have 2 children, 3 children, 5 children, they'll show up in the chute. And then usually the ones that are brightest are the ones that are coming in this lifetime. And then if there's a couple that have like a more dull light, they might be potentials, but not more so like contracted to come in. I'll also see if I see that ball, like I see the chute here. If I see them descending down, then I know that person's about to be pregnant within 1 to 3 months. And then if I see them at the bottom, then I know the person is literally pregnant or about to be pregnant within days, kind of thing. So that's how I know what's coming. When someone's already pregnant and they're like, I want to know the gender, the only way I am accurate with gender, it is never based on my feeling ever. I am never intuitively right that way. Like if I'm like, I feel this, I have to either be shown a little baby, brand new baby with a pink little toque or a blue little toque. And if spirit doesn't show me the pink or blue, I don't know. It's the
Yeah.
weirdest thing. Like, even if I'm like, I'm not sure, I'm not being shown the tooth, they're like, well, can you just feel? And if I'm like, maybe a girl, I'm not right unless I see the tooth. It's so funny.
It's so
That's funny.
interesting because once they've come in, it's almost impossible for me to really truly, because I always feel into the energy of their higher self, the babies, the souls. And that can be different than the gender in which they choose for the life
Sure.
to be experienced. So
For
I'll be
sure.
like, you have a little girl with you, right? What gender she chose to come in with in this human experience. Don't know. Don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will
Interesting.
most times not say that even, but like
Yeah.
if they had a miscarriage or something like that, they'll be very clear about the energy, the feminine or masculine energy that is around them still, because I'll be like, oh yeah, and then they're showing me this and this and this. And you even have a name for her and like that kind of stuff. And it's
Mm.
always so clear. But again, once they move into the like density of the physical body and they're already pregnant, I'm like, yeah, that's different than their baby soul in which I'm
Yeah.
communicating with, because they have to choose it for whatever experience they need to experience in this go, which is different than the energy I'm reading right now. Once
You
they're
know,
born, it's so clear. I'll be like,
yeah.
oh, yeah, like, yeah, you have a son. Yeah.
I've I've even seen souls come in and they're like, they're coming into a boy body and as they go through gestation, the soul is like, no, this is not going to work. This is not the right body. I cannot come in as a male. I need to come in as a female.
Yes,
So then they'll miscarry and then get pregnant really soon
right
within
away.
a year. And that
Yeah.
same soul comes into then what is a female
Yes.
body or
Yes.
vice versa. Yeah.
Yes. Or when they'll be like, I'm like, you had a miscarriage and then you had it's because it was like the wrong order. Like
Yeah. See that
one
too.
wanted to come in, was trying to skip the line.
Yeah, definitely.
Seriously,
Yeah.
that happened with mine, Marley. She tried to come in
Yeah.
before August, and it was like, no,
Not
you're not to
happening.
come
Wait your
in.
turn.
Yeah, you got to wait your turn, which is so clear with her personality.
Yeah. Interesting.
Pivoting away a little bit from the baby and pregnancy piece, there's also, and we've all kind of touched on it, that is interesting to bring up is that we can't force a spirit to communicate or
Mm.
communicate in a way like there's sometimes where people will come in and they really want to talk to their dad or they really want to talk
Yeah.
to their grandmother. And Jeanette, your point about they're kind of in the crowd and until they step in, you can't even necessarily get a sense that they're there always, or
Yeah.
there has to be that desire from the spirit to communicate. And I find too, the more we try to be like, can you come in? Can you come in? And like really call them, the harder that communication is, the
Mhm.
less accuracy that we get, or the
Yeah.
harder time the spirit has with actually communicating. Like maybe there's a desire to try, but for whatever reason, it's just not coming through
Oh,
clearly.
is
And
that ever hard?
it is, because it feels really
Yeah.
disappointing for the person
It's so
too.
disappointing. You're
And you're
like,
like,
I'm
ah, I'm
sorry.
sorry. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I want to, but they're just not. And that doesn't mean that they won't have messages in future, or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
for whatever reason. I think sometimes the message isn't meant for you at that
Yeah.
time, or they're not able to communicate at that time, or there
Yeah.
can be infinite reasons, but it can be tough.
Oh, that's a tricky one.
Mhm.
That's such a tough one. Oh, my heart breaks when that happened. I think of one in particular, and it's just like they want it so bad for, peace. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, they're not there.
Yeah.
They're not there to, whether it was like in this particular case, it was, uh, they were going through the transitional period still, and their higher self wasn't coming forward at that point in time. Like they were doing their stuff. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like it
Yeah.
comes through for everybody else around me. I'm like, wow, I'm sorry. Like there's nothing I
Yeah.
can do about it. And that's another thing I say at the beginning too. I said, if I'm not actually gained access into your energy field, my guides tell me why. But I can't begin to bring through a message for you if it's not open. Like then that goes like that's me really trying to not disappoint you, and that's
Mhm.
not and it's not the reading. And I
Mhm.
know it's disappointing. It's usually a timing thing, I always say, because it usually is. Then we
Yeah.
rebook.
Yeah.
And then it'll come through and you'll be like, oh yeah, you had to experience this. I think it's only happened a couple times, but yeah, I always have to give people the heads up that if I'm not gained access into your energy field, I can't bring something from nothing. I
Mhm.
don't know you. It's not Lisa Richmond human that's like, let me just like tell you like there
Mhm.
is a connection to spirit. That's what this whole thing is. And if I'm not gained access, then where am I going to bring it from? Right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Usually a
So,
timing thing though.
it's always a timing thing too
Yeah.
for me too. I've had to rebook with people and it's been exactly that. It's like they're not available, but if we rebook, like 9.9 times out of 10, they come through and they explain why they couldn't communicate before either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Spirit keeps bringing me back to this. I gotta say it. I don't know why. Maybe it's for somebody, but also another thing that comes through really strongly is when I embody a feeling or a sensation in my body that they're holding on to. So
Mm.
it'll come in, I'll be like, oh my gosh, my back. Like my back hurts so bad right now. And they're like, yeah. So it'll either be somebody that's coming through, like if I'm bringing through their grandma, and I'll be like, oh yeah, like, oh, I've got so much like obviously something happened in the brain. It's probably a stroke or an aneurysm or something. But when it's the person that I'm speaking with that is embodying a pain in their body, I can feel it. And
mhm.
Mm.
I can feel it because it's all of a sudden and it's not mine. And I know it's not mine. And that sucks because it's uncomfortable. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, you're holding so much pain in your lower back. Let's go in there. And then I'll go into the body and I'll be like, whoa, okay. Like, and then it can really help and be like, first of all, you're not imagining. It's not, when sometimes people say, oh, you manifested this pain in your back. And then people feel like that's a trigger because I'd be like, you think that
Mhm.
I'm imagining, like I made this happen to me and I don't have like chronic pain. Be like, no, I believe you very much have it. Let's
Mhm.
go in and like see what it's saying, kind of thing. So there's a lot that has started to come through that. But as an intuitive afterwards, I'm like, moving it through your body so that you don't hold
Yeah.
Shake
on
it
to
off.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, question for you all then. What is the feeling for you when a reading is coming to an end? Like, I'm not talking about the time is up, but like, does the energy like slowly dissipate? Does spirit tell you that it's coming to a close? Do you start to lose connection of the messages? Like, you can't ask any more questions? Like, what is it? What
Yeah.
is it like for you?
Like that energy is just shifted now, where
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'm sitting here talking to another human and we're like,
Hmm.
yeah, so
Yeah.
But or most times too, with the original message that starts to come through, we've circled back to. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
now we're tying it all up and be like, oh, okay, look at that, how we're all bringing this together. And if we're finishing and it's like starting to become really repetitive, and be like, yeah, that was your message, right? Like
Mhm.
there's nothing else. Now it's like, and I feel like the person can really feel it sometimes too, where they'll be like, no, I don't want to lose that connection. I don't want to lose
Yeah.
it. Right now, you're starting to
Yeah.
just be human to me, and it's like you can feel that energetic disconnect where you've received everything. You know?
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
about you, Elise?
Well, as you were saying, how like you see the spirits kind of externally as little sparkles, I see them kind of as like one ball above, and then they kind of like whoop, 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 and it's like the ball of energy kind of disintegrates a little bit, and usually all that's left is like their higher self. And so that is then who I'm usually connecting with. For me, that's usually the driver of all of them. And it kind of is like the dictator of like who's talking when and what are we going to start with and how are we going to like roll through the topics or like what is the time, because sometimes people come in with like, well, I want to know X, Y, and Z, and spirit's like, well, we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z first.
Hmm.
And so I find that that energy of that's kind of like housed by the spirit self with guides and loved ones and all sorts of people energies clumped into it, and they kind of come down piece by piece and it gets really small. So it's just that, and then it just, like you were saying, it just kind of dissipates. Like all of a sudden we're like, and we're humans and chatting about human-y stuff in
Yeah.
relation to the reading.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And if
Yeah.
there's questions by that point, oftentimes what I'll do is start using cards, or they'll like dictate towards cards, because it's like there's no one on the other end really to
Yeah.
talk to other than like a collective again that's just kind of like
Yeah.
Yeah.
dissipated into everything.
Yeah.
So that's how I
Interesting.
usually like to end readings anyways, is with cards. And it often is like a summary. It ends up being a summary of what we've talked about. Every once in a while they want me to start with cards though, and I'll do
Mm,
that.
interesting. I find it just kind of like turns off. Like, in the old TVs, when you turn the TV off and it would go like, "Vroom." It's
Hmm.
like that. Like when I tune in, everything opens up and then I can start to feel it kind of go like this. I'm like, okay, so we're coming to an end. Any last minute questions?
Yeah.
And then it's just like done.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So maybe one last question about when we tune in for ourselves, what do you notice? Because a lot of times, and this is something that I know we've chatted about, like silence, the void. But it can be hard. Is it a period of time where I'm just not getting much for myself, or am I
Hmm.
mentally blocking it in some way? And I'm curious if you have a way of distinguishing that.
I feel like the more that I want to know, like when I'm really in a place of really wanting to know, is when they're the most quiet.
Hmm.
exact same for me. Yeah. They're really like, nope.
Crickets.
Yeah. Because I'm meant to like learn something or for actually, no. They're like, no, it's about coming back to like patience and peace. They're like, lower your vibe, like chill out first. If you
Hmm.
chill out, you come back to calm, then we can come in. But if I stay up there where I'm like, no, I need this help. I need to know. I need blah, 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 then I will get nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
So, which is hard because, when you're in those moments where you're getting nothing at all for yourself, but then you go and you do a reading and you tune in for people and
Yeah.
you're like, and then you close
Hmm.
down and you're like, really nothing, spirit? And
Yeah.
they're like, no,
Yeah.
that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. I find for me too, though that is also true, the more I want the information, the less I'm going to get. But I can also sometimes feel a difference when I sit in meditation, even if it's not about me, maybe it's just like a collective tune in, or like, oh, what's going on in the energies? There's like a feeling of I can, and they're maybe not going to give me that information, or it's just like, we're not going there right now. I can feel this difference when I'm meditating between like being really human and just kind of in my body and like observing my thoughts and breathing, and I notice this, and like it's very meditative,
Yeah.
versus I feel like I can drop in and everything's like, and there's like this opening that happens. And I might
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily even get a whole lot in that space, but I can feel the difference between like human meditation, spirit meditation. It feels like
Totally.
deeper and there's like a vacuumy feeling versus like sitting here in my body, watching the thoughts, breathing, hearing the
Yeah.
sounds, just sitting.
I I absolutely love when there is that flow and you do open into that because I love what is available, right? Either just energetically, what you can see, hear, understand, and how fast and efficient the communication can be. But it's so interesting, although being able to tap in doesn't mean you get to tap in all the time for self. Like you can't
Rarely.
abuse it,
Yeah,
you
I
know, like you
feel like
can't.
it's rarely actually for me. In like very, very rarely, honestly. Um, if it's something that affects my kids or something like that, then yeah, like I'll be like, I just got to hit on this. Like, no, we're not going kind of thing. But for others, it's almost like spirits like this is a gift for the collective, for the greater good, and it's to help. It really is to help, or else I wouldn't like it's for the greater good, right? But when I'm wanting it for myself, it's like, no, that's not what it's for. It's almost like not for you. That's saying
Yeah.
not for you. It's not for you. It's like
That darn card.
my intuitiveness is not for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel
Interesting.
like that's a great point around why having like intuitive community is important because the amount of times that we ask each other to tune in
Thank
about
Totally.
God.
things,
Sorry,
like,
thank God
yeah,
we have each other.
yeah, because
Yeah.
like I know for me, I'll be like, am I crazy right now? Like, I'm making
Yeah.
this out of nothing. I'm imagining things. Like my 3D brain with all the pains and things is like, you're crazy. Da, da, da. And having to like reach out and be like, okay, I need somebody to check in on this for me because I don't know what is happening.
Yeah.
Is super, super helpful and can help ground it. And then being able to give that back,
Yeah.
it makes it so that you can still learn and grow and journey within yourself and learn your own intuition, but also still have it be like
Yeah.
for others.
My guides are really funny with me right now. They're like, Lisa, stop it. Stop saying that. Like you're lying. They're like, what about all the symbolisms we give you on a daily basis? What about all the little intuitive bits that you use every single day? Like, give us a break, as if we don't help you. That was literally the conversation. They're
They
like,
just
get
called
over
you out.
yourself. They
Yeah.
totally called me out for me being like, I never get anything for myself. They're like, come on, get over it. Like we leave you dimes like every day. There's that like we're in and out all the time. Like don't underestimate the fact that you use your intuition. We're communicating with you literally all the time. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's true. So it's like, don't underestimate the synchronicity, symbols, and signs that you get on a daily basis to confirm, or the gut feelings that you get to not enter into something, or not to go somewhere, or not to respond to a certain call or text or something like that. Like, these are all like intuitive hits and guidances that we all get on a collective every single day.
Yeah.
So they're like,
True.
do not leave people thinking that intuition doesn't come forward for themselves. They're like, get back out there and correct yourself, woman.
That's awesome.
That's so
Fine.
funny.
Funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
primary example of that quickly, there was something that I was getting really like about, and I was asking for all these signs, and then I'd like kind of get them, and I'm like, Spirit, that's not good enough. Like, I want it more clear. Can it just be a little more clear? So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I promise. Last time I'm gonna ask. I just really need it to be really clear, and I want you to show me this thing, and it's something I've never seen before. It's not in my house. It's not like I can't make it up. There's no convincing. And then I'm like, okay, thanks. Go to bed, put my journal away, wake up the next morning. Lisa texts me, hey, I pulled these cards and there's these owls on it. And I just wanted to send it to you.
Yeah, I
I'm like,
pulled it for myself. Like, I'm pulling these cards, right? Owl, 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 three in a row. And I'm like, holy shit. And they're like, text this to Elise. I'm like, she doesn't want to see my poll. They're like, text this to Elise. I'm like, okay. So I took
yeah,
a picture. Hey, I'm supposed to
Funny.
send this to you.
yeah. Like, okay, thank you for sending it, and also message received. I won't ask
Yeah.
anymore. Paul, you,
Yeah.
they're not even my cards. I've never seen the deck before, so I've never. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Heard you. Yeah. Okay. Any last thoughts on
That was a fun
that?
conversation.
Was.
Yeah, that was. That
Oh
was
my
good.
gosh. Sorry, they're just reminding me what I was going to say
Oh yeah,
at the
your
beginning.
thing.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you said
yeah.
something about like how we can often be told that like these things aren't real and it can create a lot of distrust. Have you listened to the podcast The Telepathy Tapes?
No, I've
Oh
heard
my
about it
gosh,
though, but
I've
I
heard
haven't.
so much about this.
You need to listen to it. I'm binging it right
Okay.
now.
Okay, I
It's
Oh,
will.
I got
about
goosebumps.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. And it's about, it's a documentary lady, and she's working with a physician who is doing and trying to raise funding around research, but it's speaking to communities of parents and nonverbal and autistic children,
Yeah.
and like proof. And the scientific community is like, well, this isn't proofy enough.
Mm.
But it's like, it's pretty proofy, and they're trying to like create funding so they can do like really intense research studies on it. But it's showing these nonverbal children reading the minds of their caretakers, their teachers, and like how teachers have been talking about, I'm getting goosebumps. Teachers have been trying to like say this about like their nonverbal students knowing things about their life, knowing their
Oh my God.
passwords,
I
knowing
have
things,
goosebumps.
and that they meet in this like it's called the hill, and they meet in this like energetic space where they communicate with each other with other nonverbal kids from all over the world. And they
Mm.
Haven't
and
you
it's
guys
Definitely
starting.
want to
seen
watch that.
that? Haven't you seen that when you connect into like nonverbal? Like, have you ever done readings for parents with their
I
kids
haven't, no.
nonverbal?
I
Oh my
haven't.
God.
I
And their
haven't.
kids, like you're like, whoa. Or like when you like, okay, so personal experiences, just different kids or individuals that I've seen that are like nonverbal or like anyway. It's almost like you're like, oh, you're such high frequency trying to be
Mm.
in a human body. Like you are the lightest
Mm.
light being, almost where you can hear the frequency. And I'm like, oh, like it is such high like you're tuning into like the highest frequency that is trying to hang out in a human dense body. And you're like, holy, like I'm like instantly turn down the music, turn down the sound, turn down everything. Like, holy shit, this person's trying to be in his dense body, and it's just like the two aren't like yeah, I've said this for years, so I
Mhm.
want to listen to this. Yeah.
It's so
Yeah, I'm
good.
gonna
It's
deep dive
so
that for
it's
sure.
so good. And it's like, yeah, I'll just stop there.
Okay.
It's an incredible. Yeah. And
Ooh.
I think they're trying to do more with it to like really solidify it into more of a scientific. Jeanette, when I was listening to your podcast with Dr. Amy Robbins, I was like, yes, because she was talking about this, like a shift
Yeah.
of how we can understand these things scientifically. And I know she spoke to a couple different studies that are ongoing. So all to
Hmm.
say, I love that like more of this is starting to be understood. And in the
Yeah.
podcast, they have people who are like named skeptics. Like I am a skeptic, and I'm going to go observe and be part of the videoing of this interview with this person. And they walk out of there being like, I am questioning my whole belief system. I
Yeah.
Oh,
don't
it's
know
so
how to
neat.
explain what I just
Yeah.
watched. Like that was
Yeah.
incredible. And they play games with them and test it. It's really, really amazing. So
Oh,
would
that's so
recommend.
cool. I
Amazing.
can't wait to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
Well, this was fun.
Yeah,
That
that
was
was
Thanks,
fun.
ladies. Let us know if you have any questions or like further kind of pieces of this that you want us to dive into in deeper episodes.
yeah.
And also let us know what your experience is with tuning in and how it feels for you, what it looks like. I always start my readings with like every intuitive medium person is different. So this is how it is for me. So we would love to
Same.
hear
Yeah.
about yours as well.
Yeah. Very cool.
And
And if you want to book a session with any of us, you can find us on avalonspirit.com.
yeah. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.